Hello everyone, this is Aaron Johnson with the Johnson iRacing team, coming to you today from USA International Speedway. It's December 30th. This is the third week of the iRacing 2021 season. The Legends cars are at USA International this week. I've had several people contact me and ask about, how do you run up front here? How do you win here? And in my previous video, I stated I thought there were three things that you need to be able to do. One, you need to be able to qualify. Two, you need a setup that's going to allow you to keep the car on the yellow line as you go through the corners. And three, you have to figure out how to manage your tires. In yesterday's video, the one that I posted on the 29th, I talked about the line that you run and how you get around the racetrack. Today I'm going to talk about how you qualify. So what I've done is I've chosen a practice session that had no participants in it. In my previous video on making a qualifying setup, I said you start at a test track, but I've since learned that the test track performance doesn't really translate to the on-track performance very well, I think because with every build, iRacing changes the racing tracks just a little bit, but I don't think they change the test tracks as much. So what I'm going to do is I've selected this practice session that had no participants, and I've got my racing setup loaded. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the pits here, and I'm going to drive hard, like my car is up to speed, like my tires are warm. I'm not going to try to baby it. I'm going to drive it and see how it feels. I'm going to hop in. We're going to hop into the cockpit here so you can ride along with me. And I'm going to run this car as if it's about lap 5 or 6, and I'm driving just as hard as I can. I've went ahead and turned the driving line on for this qualifying video. I probably wouldn't have the driving line on for qualifying if I were in a race situation, but I think it'll help you see what I'm trying to accomplish here. So I'm driving this car pretty hard. I get right down on the yellow line. You can see the back end try to jump out, so the car's loose and really loose out of the corner. I bounce off the wall here, and just for shits and grins, let's go ahead and watch the tail end of this crash because I end up upside down here. So I jumped in, I ran really hard. I have a car that's loose on cold tires, and that tells me that I'm going to have to make an adjustment before I qualify. I'm going to go ahead and do this again, and this time I'm going to follow my qualifying line, and I'll kind of talk you through that. So I'm going to come out of the pits. I'm going to be on the throttle pretty hard, trying to get some heat in the tires, as much heat as I can as I come out. And then instead of making a typical dive down into the corner for the yellow line, I'm going to stay up high. And I'm going to stay up high until I reach my spot on the track. Then I'm going to turn down, and I'm going to use the banking of the racetrack to try to get a little bit of a run out of the corner to give myself a little more speed. Then, this would be the first qualifying lap. I'm going to try to get right down onto the start-finish line. We'll crawl into the cockpit, and this would be a qualifying run. I've made no changes to the suspension now, so this car should still be loose. You can see it try to get a little sideways there. It wiggles a little more in the center of the corner and is loose coming off again. So I've got a loose race car. I can't run wide open, so I'm going to have to make a change. But let's go ahead and follow this through. Car's really loose again, coming out of 4. It goes ahead and comes around as I try to drive it hard. We slide down into the infield wall. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe try to drive it just a little more, even now with the tires a little warmer from all that slipping and sliding, and see if it remains loose. Run up through the gears here. Out of 4 onto the front straightaway, now right up against the wall. And we'll try one more lap. Now, since I spun sideways before, my right rear's hot. You can see the car gets loose coming out of 2. And so I've got a loose race car. I'm going to have to do something to tighten that up before I can really qualify. I got down on the apron, loose again, overcorrected, bam, into the outside wall. What that tells me is I'm going to have to change something on the car. And that's what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and go back to TV1. At this point in time, I went over to the garage and I made a change. Now, one of the things that I found that works really well at USA International Speedway is that if you come out of the pits and you drive the car like the tires are warm and the car is loose, the first change I make is to the stagger. So I went back to my garage page, I went to my tire page, and I dropped the rear stagger by 0.125. So I went one click down. On my particular setup, my race setup runs 1 inch of stagger front and rear, but I changed the rear to 0.875. That should tighten the car up. You don't want to do that for the race because that little bit of change in the stagger will make your car tighter for the short run, but it's going to make your car push like a bulldozer for the long run, and you really don't want that. If you go out and you run a hard lap and your car's not loose at all, your car's too tight, and you're going to need to loosen that setup a little bit. You want a setup that's just a little bit loose on cold tires. That's going to make you a little quicker. So if you go out and your car's already tight, you need to make a setup change for the race. But if you come out and your race setup's really loose like mine was, drop the stagger 1/8 of an inch and then hop back out onto the racetrack and let's see what happens. So that's me making the change. Here I am headed out, so I'm going to go back into the cockpit so you can watch this qualifying setup. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to give it as much gas as I can coming out of the pits. I'm not going to go easy out of the pits. I'm going to go hard. I'm going to drive it as hard as I can to get as much heat in the tires as I can, as quickly as I can, because even with the change that I've made, I still need to have good, hot, sticky tires if I'm going to run a fast qualifying lap. So out of the pits hard. Now this darting back and forth that I'm doing here, I'm scrubbing the tires a little bit. I'm going to back this up. We're going to come out of the pits and I'm going to show you on the chase cam what this looks like. I'm working the steering wheel back and forth quickly, again, to try to get heat into the tires. My idea here is to get as much heat as I can. I'm going to go up high, and about the time I get to this green light, I'm going to start to turn the car down the racetrack. I'm going to use the banking of USA International Speedway to get a run off the corner. I probably could have turned it down a little more aggressively there. But you'll remember when I showed the video yesterday showing how to run a fast lap here, one of the things I said was we wanted to be at 98 by the flag stand. Well, using that high line and coming off the banking, we're at 99, so we should be carrying more speed into turn 1 on this qualifying lap than we have in a regular race situation because we've been able to use the banking to our advantage. And you'll see, if you watch this closely, you'll see the speed actually for just a moment flashes to 103 miles an hour, which is easily the quickest kind of time you're going to see from, or kind of speed you're going to see from me. So we're running about 103. We're turning in at about the same place we typically have turned in the past. We'll go back into the cockpit and back up just a little bit more. There's the white mark that I use for my turn-in mark. And if we move forward frame by frame, we'll see that just after that goes under the nose of my car is when I start to make my turn in. I was maybe a touch late coming in there, but I'm a little more aggressive coming in, so it all works out in the end. Right? Roll into the corner, get two wheels right down on that yellow line and get into the throttle hard coming out. And because of the stagger change, the car's not as loose, so I'm able to keep my foot on the throttle, get on early, and keep it on the throttle hard all the way out of turn number 2. You want to get right up against the wall in the back straightaway. Use that same little out and an in maneuver here as you go into turn number 3. Right down onto the yellow line again, and then back out and up against the wall. That's a 23.6 on cold tires first lap out of the gate, which is faster than anything we ran yesterday in my training video. Partly that's the track conditions. The track is 72 degrees, which is nice and cool. It was at 81 last night, so we're going to be a little faster. What that also means is we've got a pretty good qualifying lap here. That's going to put you in the top 5 most of the time in the top split. And certainly in the second split or further down, if you can figure out how to run a 23.6 for the qualifier, you're going to be on the pole or at least on the front row so that you can start up front. It's really hard to run from the back to the front at USA International, so running a good qualifying lap is really important. Go ahead and see that down into turn number 1 again, right down onto the yellow line. Slid up just a little bit, so this is going to be a slower lap. And that is an artifact of changing the stagger. I'm already seeing the effects of having less stagger in the rear. The car's wanting to push a little more. That's going to slow me down, but it doesn't matter. The first lap out of the gate's the gate that I was working for, or the lap that I was working for. We still ran a 23.626, which is a really good lap. And I'd be pretty happy with that. So I'm going to turn the driving line off so you can see what this is going to look like if you're racing without the driving line. We'll go back. And we'll start, let's see. Yeah, we'll go back and we'll run the full qualifying lap from inside the cockpit so you can see the whole series of events. And I'm going to go ahead this time and just show you what this looks like from my perspective now as a driver. Working that wheel, it gets heat into the tires, and even though you've tightened the car up or you've got the car closer, you want to get heat up high, turn down here if you can. I should have turned down a little sharper, and then run 2 hard laps like your car's perfect. Car pushes up here. I was either in a little hard or the car was starting to push, I imagine. In fact, I'm convinced that it's the change in stagger. So this setup's really only going to be a 1.5 lap setup, but all you need is 1 good lap to put yourself up front and to set yourself up to be successful and to run in the front. That's what a 2-lap qualifier looks like at USA International Speedway. So if you're racing at USA this week in the Legends cars, there are 3 things you want to focus on. First thing, you want a setup that's going to allow you to keep that car on the yellow line through both sets of corners. To do that, you're going to need to get your cross weight down to between 49 and 51%. If you're running more than 51% cross, it's never going to work in the long term. You're going to slow down. You're going to push like a bulldozer at the end. If you're running less than 49%, the car may never really come in and give you that set of 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 good laps that allows you to really make some time. The second thing you're going to want to do is you need to qualify well. It is hard to start 12th or 13th or 14th at USA International and run to the front. You want to qualify in the top half. You know, a good qualifying effort puts you in the top 7 or so, maybe the top 6. And really, if you can do a good job qualifying, you can be inside the top 5. And qualifying then is one of the big keys. And then last but not least, during the race, you want to make sure that you roll in and out of the throttle. Going from being off the throttle to being matted to having the pedal all the way to the floor, using that gas pedal like a light switch is a lot harder on tires than rolling in and out of the throttle. And that's going to save tires. And that could maybe it only makes a 0.05 second difference at the end. But if it does that over 20 laps, that's a second. And that's the difference between being in 4th place in the top split and being with the leader at the end where you maybe have a chance to make a move. I hope you find this video helpful. I know that our goal with the How to Run Up Front in the Legend Car series here at the Johnson iRacing Team Network is to give you the tools you need to go fast. iRacing's a lot more fun when everybody's fast and when people are stable. It's easier to race with somebody that has a stable car and a fast car than it is to race with someone that's all over the track. And a lot of times people are all over the track because their setups are not very good and they're trying to learn. So we're trying to help people go fast and turn left and have fun. And I hope that this video helps you figure out how to qualify toward the front. For the Johnson iRacing team on the Johnson iRacing Network, this is Aaron Johnson saying, go fast, turn left, have fun.